We got turkey tail. Last week we did lion's mane before the chat. Get the hemispheres balanced before we talk on the chat.
Okay, maybe like angle it in.
Yeah, angle it like, yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Mate, that feels good.
Yeah. Want a little swing, Chris?
Yes, I will. 32 is unforgiven.
It totally is. Don't whip it in the mirror. Oh, straight overhead. No warm up. Oh, one hand on that. It's
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. You have to really fucking grip that thing, otherwise it's going through the mirror,
Go
man.
through the mirror, man.
That is gonna be a route. Nice. Oh, good.
Oh. Ooh. Ooh.
Nice, mate.
It's a good bit of steel, that, isn't it? Good to go. We're good to go. Hello, once again, episode 3. The Rediscover Human tribe is back with Chris and Josh. And today's episode, we want to do something a bit more specific. Once again, I guess we did a specific one last week. This week, I wanted to do it as it's the guys have kindly let me sort of lead this one, and I wanted to make it on a tool that has helped me very much since discovering it 6 months ago, biomechanically, physically, mentally, in many ways. But we'll get into all that. But basically, I want to do an episode on the rope, which some of you might have seen me playing with. So I just wanted to let the guys, if they have any questions, it might help. Any of you guys listening might have questions. So I wanted Josh and Chris to ask me any questions they've had, and I'll tell the story of how I got into it and that. But yeah, thanks for letting me do this, guys. Appreciate it.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
I think a good place to start would be just giving everyone a little bit of background on your sort of like athletic career. Because, you know, if someone was just coming in, well, I've been training with you over the last few months and I know how revolutionary the rope has been for you. I think if it was just anyone coming in off the street, you know, they could find a kettlebell or whatever piece of equipment revolutionary. Yeah. But you, with your background, the fact that you've sort of played with all these training tools over years and years and years, and you discover the rope and it really changes the game for you, I think that's an important thing to highlight.
Yeah. I guess I covered some of it in the first one, but I'll briefly cover it again, I guess. So I did I did breakdancing as a young person. I was always fascinated with movement and what the body can do without many variables. Like I liked skateboarding, I did rollerblading and things like that. But just the human body, take away all the variables that we've sort of created, the body in space against gravity or whatever. Breakdancing was fascinating to me. Then I got into parkour and freerunning. I went on to win World Freerunning Championships and some Red Bull Art of Motions. Then I competed in Ninja Warrior and competed in American Ninja Warrior. I was captain of Team Europe, and we won the first season of USA vs. the World. Went on to when UK finally got a Ninja Warrior, I've come last man standing on 2 out of the 3 series that I've competed on that. So it means I got the furthest on the show. Yet to complete it, if I'm honest, and we'll see what the future holds. But essentially, I did the best at Ninja Warrior, and it's funny because even though I've achieved that much, I know my body, and the more you know about movement and biomechanics, and the more you learn about that, and you see athletes that are impressive, and then the more you improve your ability to move, then you can see things in athletes because you know them in yourself. And this is true as you improve in any sport. If you're if martial artist, you've gone through that path, or in football or something like that, you're able to see the skill in what someone's doing because you have your own practice. If you don't have your own practice, it's really hard to identify this. I'm sure you see it with rugby.
Yeah, 100%.
You must see it with kettlebells when we're swinging it. You must see the little little mini timing cues of the
Yeah,
back.
all the minute finesse, and like, yeah, you can see it, not just in kettlebells, but everything, man.
In everything,
Yeah,
but I'm saying we each have a practice that we do that helps us to see it, that can relate to other things. And so my baseline has been human movement, not, like I say, it's not BMXing or anything like that. It's just humans expressing themselves physically, like breakdancing, free running, dance is, I guess breakdancing covers that, but dance as well. And so doing it somewhat mindlessly or unconsciously to a degree, although it's harsh to say that on myself, but it was like when I trained breakdancing, I just saw cool tricks, flips, strong holds, hollow backs, and knew nothing about leveraging within the body, how strength should be. And whereas you look at a gymnast, and if you silhouetted a gymnast, they would all look pretty much identical in a silhouette, because they are having to have the epitome of like strength. In order to hold iron cross, they all have to have aligned strength and use the body in the same way, because it takes such strength to do it. Whereas you see a breakdancer, you silhouette a breakdancer, they all look slightly different, because they're not following the most, they don't have to be, because it's about style as well, they don't have to be the most optimum use of strength. And we talk about this with strongmen as well. Strongmen, in order to lift the heaviest weights, generally will have similar techniques in everything that they're doing, and there's a path to those techniques. And so on this journey of trying to of growing in understanding of movement, having no understanding of movement, just wanting to copy people, like I'd see a junior breakdancer who could do press-ups on his fingertips with his feet hovering off the floor, and I'd want to copy that. And so I'd try and do it in my own way, but I had no understanding of like a gymnastics way to build the strength, where your elbows should be positioned or anything. So you're just throwing pain at a wall, basically. But as I've grown, and truthfully through injuries and through problems that have caused me to ask certain questions, led me onto a path of biomechanics. And so getting into running was a massive chapter for me. I guess I didn't touch on that. I got into obstacle course racing, because I thought if I can do the obstacles, if I run well, then I could do well at obstacle course racing. And it's another challenge for me. And I liked being in nature a bit more at that point. So did that, got it, that made me get into running. And after a few years of running, I got injuries and these niggles that wouldn't go away. I could warm up through them, but then that would feel worse. Once I cooled down, my body would just feel really bad. And so I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to just keep warming up through niggles. How about I try and solve the niggles and work on that? And there's so many things to address when it comes to that. But fundamentally, if you're driving a car and the axle's bent or the disc pad's at a wrong angle, it's going to affect the way the car drives, and it's going to wear out a lot quicker. And that's how I see a human is, we all have the same skeletal frame, and there's obviously small nuances, but we've got the same frame, same amount of ligaments and joints that are supposed to function the same way. The same way all cats have similar biomechanics to each other, and birds and other animals. If I can't run without being injured, then something is wrong at a fundamental level with my biomechanics and how my body is functioning. Now, to identify the problem is a real minefield, because the place that hurts is not where the issue normally is. 95, 97, 99% of the time, what hurts, and Strongfit said this, and I've been saying, he just coined it in a really nice way. He said that's the end of the issue. It's not the start of the issue. So often we have injuries where the muscles or the tendons are getting stretched. So there's a tightness somewhere else that you don't feel pain in that's causing the stretch to happen. So where we feel pain, we go to that and we pressure that and we ice that. But the root of it is some tight part of our body somewhere that could have been caused from an injury in childhood, from previous sports. It could be caused from emotional trauma that's locked us into a certain way of posture that we hold our body. So there's many causes. So to like I say, to get to the root of this, to solve or to improve the biomechanics back to good posture, and in turn good walking and good running patterns, it is a minefield that you have to face. You can't just go to a physiotherapist. One, I think they're not on the money anyway, because they're just looking at where the pain is. But you have to look at it physically. So you do have to solve it physically, whether you use a physiotherapist or other practices to do that, which are out there on, like, certain people are coming up with good solutions. But you have to work on the emotional side of yourself, because there's something emotionally that's holding the injury there as well. And that might be some self-worth issue, or something that I don't deserve this ability to do this anymore, or something like some real deep issue, some trauma that's come from somewhere. And that's when you have to get into sort of plant medicines and breath work and what stuff Chris Walton does, EFT, the tapping. There's so much. So the journey of correcting biomechanics is a long one, but for me, it's if the fundamental purpose of our body is to transport our mind, and it's designed to do that by walking and running. That is its primary design. Like a car is meant to drive. Now, the car can also light up a room if you turn the headlights on, or it can have air conditioning, or it can play music. But the purpose of it is transportation. The purpose of it is to drive from A to B, and the other stuff is all secondary. So the purpose of our physical flesh body is transportation in the mode of walking and running. And so from that spawns everything else. Throwing patterns, swimming and stuff like that are all forms of functional patterns of movement that come off from locomotion, that might be reverse patterns of locomotion. To throw is like we use what's running one way, we reverse it to throw. And maybe with visuals, you might be able to understand that more, or you can just grasp it. So on that journey of getting into biomechanics and trying to solve my ability so that I could run regularly without injuries, and that was it. I just loved running. I loved spending time in nature. I loved looking up at mountains, looking at the summit of Snowdon and going, I can be up there in an hour, or an hour later I'm suddenly on top of it and running down the other side gleefully, you know. And the mountain shrinks. The more you're able to run and be healthy in your body, in the purpose of transport that it's made for, the more confident you feel in your surroundings, and the more at home you feel on earth, in a way. If you're trying to walk up a mountain and your ankle's sore and you're sweating and you're breathing heavy, there's not much joy in that. And so some people just then, I'm just not going to walk up mountains. So then I'm just going to sit in a house all day, or I'm going to walk on flat ground my whole life. Well, that's fine. That's your choice. But for me, I like the empowering feeling that it gives me to be able to conquer a mountain as light as possible and as free as possible. So that is what's driven me to understand my body. On top of that, I'm able to then help others because of my quest, which is a real benefit as well. And that has led me to one of the first things on that chapter of someone I saw asking all the right questions that I started to ask at that point was Naudi Aguilar of Functional Patterns. He was asking a lot of questions about weightlifting, yoga and stuff like this. Now, I've pursued that path as far as I could, as far as I was allowed. I did the Human Foundations course. I did the online course, listened to a lot of stuff he said, and came to a dead end with it, if I'm honest. I came to a dead end, and that's the whole story for another time. But that dead end, well, I'm grateful for that journey, and that's led me onto another ladder, because someone says, have you seen this guy, David Weck? He invented the Bosu ball, that half dome inflatable ball that people balance on in the gym. I was like, no, I've never heard of this guy. And this is Arthur Pollins put me onto this, a breathwork guy. I was at a workshop with Tony Riddle, the natural lifestylist, and brought this up. And he mentioned this to me. I said, no, I'll check him out. And so that night I was sleeping in my car in Chester before I was going to run 10 miles the next day with Tony Riddle. And I went on my phone and I searched for this guy on Instagram. I ended up on like a 3-hour binge till about 1 a.m. in the back of my car, staring at my screen. Not a good idea, but one of those days when you're just really caught in a passion of something. Like I was watching his Instagram videos and I just couldn't quite understand him, but there was something that clicked for me that was like, keep watching, because there'd be these little nuggets that made sense to me, talking about you've got to put martial intent into your movement and stuff. And I went on the website and I saw, these guys are legit. They do courses. Like, he looks like a crazy dude. Like, he's wearing 2 or 3 pairs of glasses at a time. But then he's got people around him that seem like legit athletes. They do monthly courses. They do running workshops. They sell products. It must be legit. And so I was going to spend some money on my next functional patterns course. And on the reason I'm in Bristol was there was a coach here that was really good, on him as well. And when that fell through, I thought, just trust this, let's follow this through. And so October last year, I ended up going out to San Diego to do my Weck Method qualification. And I hadn't touched a rope at this point. I'd just seen it online, and I'd seen the pulses they do when they run. And they have like maracas, like beads in these hand things they hold in the hand. And every time you run, you bounce the beads, and it teaches you the rhythm to pulse with your hands as you run. And I thought, that looks really interesting. I'm into running. If there's someone claiming that the biomechanics of running can be done slightly different, I'm going to listen. I'm not going to just believe it off the bat, but I'm going to listen because it's a fascinating topic for me. If someone's claiming that maybe we don't all run how we're told we should run, and when you look at sprinters on TV and they're square and they keep their spine stiff and they swing their arms. And this guy's saying that that's wrong. And you look at Bolt and the way you saying Bolt runs and he's swinging all over the place, but that might be the reason he's faster. You're like, well, the point proves itself that he is faster than the others. So maybe there's something in it if this guy can tell me how. So anyway, I went over to San Diego, did the course, and within the first day, it was a 3-day course, and every day you did a bit on the ropes, a bit on the pulsers, and a bit on Royal Coil, and a few other things, which I can't really explain on a podcast. But within, I think, a minute of picking up the rope for the first time, and them explaining that it connects the right hand and the left hand, like when you have a cup and a string, and you talk to someone down the cup and the string, and that's your right hand and your left hand are talking to each other. When that clicked, I was like, whoa, I've got to put time in on this. And so I was there with the guy called Ken Diesel, and he was from Florida, big black sprinter guy. And we ended up just getting on like a house on fire, and we went out, and certain herbs are legal in California. So we went and got some herbs that evening, and I went to his Airbnb, and he showed me some more I did half an hour in class or whatever on the rope, and then he showed me some more, and he'd been doing it for about a month to 6 weeks at that point. And he was really like looking fast with it, but I didn't really know what I was looking at. He just looked strong and powerful with it. And he said, Tim, I've done about 40 hours in the last month on this rope. My 100-meter time's gone down. I can't remember how much he said it's gone down. Or he said he's running as fast now as he ever did in high school, and he's like not trained for it. He's just doing rope and pulses. And he's like, you just got to put the time in. And I was like, okay, got it. And so next day went to class, putting time in on the rope. In between learning things, I was on the rope. In the evenings with him, I was on the rope. Came back to England. I was there for a few weeks. I'll go just skim on that. And I spent more time with David Weck, and I stayed for 10 days after the course finished. And I stayed at his house, and we went to Joshua Tree together as well. And I got to ask him all the questions I could. I got to see him move. I got to go truly to understand it as well as it could be explained by the man that sort of brought this. I don't even know how he brought it through. I'm assuming he discovered it somehow. I don't know if someone taught him. I don't know.
Probably some crazy story to that.
Yeah, I'd love to get him on at some point and chat to him about it. But anyway, essentially, I put the time on the rope. I came back to England. I was in the gym every day. I managed to hit, I think, about 40 hours in a month, maybe 40 hours in 40 days or something like that. But there was times when I'd go and I'd just go, I'm going to do 5-minute warm up on the rope. An hour later, I'm just sweating, swinging this rope. And it's I don't know. You got any questions up to this point? Just
So my personal experience with it is, I've only played around a bit with it a little bit, stuff you've shown me, and immediately I felt there was a difference. Yeah. And like I said before, I played quite a lot.
In what way was that difference carried over to you, the way you moved, or to?
Yeah, definitely. So I think through years of playing rugby and also through like squatting and doing conventional barbell movements, I'm pretty rigid, my upper body. And there's a fluidity that you need to adopt, or the rope teaches you to adopt. And it hasn't fully clicked for me yet, but I know there's something there. And I've got a feeling, first of all, it's really enjoyable to do, so I want to do it anyway. But I just have got a sense that once that starts clicking and I'm able to become really fluid on the rope, then that fluidity is going to transfer over into other movements, other practices that I'm doing.
Yeah. It's that 40 hours, I think.
Yeah, that's the mark.
I think that's it. I'm going to take that. As Ken told me, I'm going to say that to you. Because you've probably done an hour and a half, maybe 2 so far. But you get your own rope and you just put in the time. And it's almost a meditation sometimes, isn't it? You get lost in the flow. The rope does half the work. But I'm not sure if we're missing. So is there anything we're missing just leading up to this point?
Not particularly, dude. No. I'm just interested in just listening to your story, man. I'm just observing over here.
Cool. I'll carry on then. So I put in the time on the rope. And then like we went out for a run the other day, and I was saying, when you move, when you run, you imagine the underhand rope. So what the rope does, and it's hard without the visuals, I guess. You know what? This might be a good time to go to the video, and we'll go to that. So as of today, or around today, when this podcast gets released, I'm releasing a video on YouTube, which is me explaining the rope with the visuals, because I think the visuals really, really help as well. So I'm going to show it to these guys. They've got a draft done, not completely finished. And then if you guys can go away and watch it, or you can watch it after this or something, but we're going to cut here. I'm going to show these guys and we're going to come back and just get some reactions. Cool.
So we've just watched the video that you're releasing today. The same day this podcast is coming out.
Should be, to be determined, within this week though.
Okay, cool.
Keep an eye out.
But for everyone else that's listening who wasn't able to pause this and go watch the video, do you want to just explain a little bit about the rope, why it's, more special than your average rope?
Yeah. So basically, I guess part of the reason I'm doing this is because I'm launching to sell my own ropes today. And I'm not doing this because I'm on some hustle, I see an opportunity. It's because I'm really passionate about it. Because I think anyone that's listening at this point gets that, right?
I can vouch for that.
Yeah. And the difference with this rope, because someone was like, can I use a skipping rope? And you can use a skipping rope and it would still be the same patterns of movement, but you wouldn't get the feedback that the weight of the rope is sort of, as you swing the rope, it's kind of pulling you and guiding you. And you do these subtle movements that you notice as you get more attuned with the rope, come from kind of the ground up from your feet and kind of from your center. If you see like a golf swing or a boxer do an uppercut and it comes from their feet first and it ripples up through the body, the weight of the rope helps you to find that. Because people say it's kind of like poi or it's kind of like bow staff. Or a lot of people message me and say it's like this sport or it's like that. I could see it, wrestling patterns in it and stuff. I don't even do wrestling. So I can't see that. But from you coming from a wrestling background, that's cool to hear that you see that in it. So what it really does is it trains in a category of movement that no other sport can really hit, because it's coordination training. People train strength and they'll train the sport, but they don't train the whole body to work as one unit because we don't really know how. Well, this is the only tool I've found, because it connects your left and your right side. It completes the circuitry of your left and the right, of energy going out from the right. The left is involved as well. And when energy goes out the left, the right is involved as well. So that light connection that isn't stiff, like with a bow staff, the movements will be the same. But if you've got any kind of mobility issues in your shoulder or your wrist, it's going to limit it. Because the rope's forgiving enough, it allows you to have bad mobility, but still work through it while you smooth the edges of that mobility and improve the mobility and learn the patterns that you should be moving in. If we mentioned strong fit, and that he talks about internal and external torque. Well, when you're swinging the rope, if you imagine holding a sword right now and you're swinging it in an uppercut motion, left and right and left and right. If you just play fight with a sword, that's the underhand motion, and you can picture how you're drawing a figure of 8 with your hands at that point. And when you're moving on this figure of 8 path, all of your joints should, for it to be the most efficient, they would all be involved. Now, often it wouldn't. We just move our wrists or we just move our shoulders, and our ribs or our spine wouldn't move. But as you do that pattern over and over, 100,000 of times, eventually your ribs and your spine learn to get involved in that pattern. And so it spreads the movement over more joints. And when you spread the movement evenly over more joints, then you're able to move with a lot more ease rather than the
And I think that was my sort of exact experience with it. So the first time I was swinging it, I was rigid as a board and the rope just coming down either side. Yeah. But then you learn to start moving with the rope. And just like you said, your spine almost wakes up and you start getting into this sort of flow and almost flow state as you're doing it. Yeah. And like you mentioned in the video, it's almost like a standing meditation. Yep. And you can see how that can be so applicable to many, many other sports, or probably every other sport, because just building that coordination between your left and your right side and enhancing that is just going to greaten your ability to compete at whatever you want to compete at.
Exactly. It's so we talk about the rope. You've got a piece in the handle in the left and one in the right, and you've got the rope completing the circuit. But it's also, which is how it applies to other sports, weightlifting or anything, is as you're swinging the rope, it hits the ground, or it should be set to a length where it hits the ground every rotation. And when it does that, your ear hears when it hits the ground. And what happens after it hits the ground is it starts to rise. So your ear knows when it's hit the ground, so it knows that it's starting to rise. So your legs know to start to spring. So you're getting this feedback of the hands being at the and this is where it differs from jumping the rope. And I hope people can grasp this, because this is people think it's similar, and yet it's the complete opposite of jumping the rope. When you jump a rope, your hands go down as your feet come up. So you're compressing and you learn to like hover in space. What you want to do when you jump is you want your kind of knees and hands or feet to be at the lowest point, and then they all rise together. If you think about springing up, you want to extend everything evenly at the right time. So you crouch and then you jump. So you push with your legs and your arms rise. So you know when people dunk, they swing their arms behind, they plant their feet, and then as their body legs start to extend, their arms come up. When you're swinging the rope, it hits the floor at the lowest point, and then everything rises from that point. So you're getting this audio feedback that connects your lower body and your upper body to work together. And the rope connects the left and the right. So it kind of completes all circuitries for the body in that sense. So you can start to play with it. And you'll see in the video, I'm playing with jumping side to side and footwork, the footwork that comes along with it as well, and head over foot placement. There's things that when I was playing with the rope, I'd want to ask one of the Weck coaches, and like, I've got this question and this question. And I didn't end up really asking any questions. I just put time in and I didn't need the answers. My body just found the patterns by themselves. It really just came to me, and I think it can come to anyone because it's in our DNA, is in the way we move. So it's just, the thing with Weck is he talks so passionately, like, this is one of the most interesting things. He talks like we're living in, like, where the roots of humans before guns, right? Where people would just sneak up on someone and slit them with a thing under their armpit and kill them like there. And it's like, you had to be so much sneakier, and you had to be in balance, and you had to, he talks like about biblical times and stuff like this, and how humans, we live so differently now to how we used to, because you can just have a gun and you live in a house with locks and stuff like that. But back in the day, you had to be so much more on point with your body and knowing how to move and be ready at all times. And he comes from that perspective, and he talks about sticks, stones, and the rope, and he talks about David and Goliath. You know, that's how David beat Goliath, because he had the rope and the ability to use it, right, and slinged the rock because he knew how to.
So I've noticed this as well since starting to use it. It's just like that concept of being always ready to go. So when you see an animal in nature and they're, just walking along, and in a split second they can spring off, or they can, they can leap, pounce to attack. And I think for me, when I was doing more, before coming into this latest training block, where I was doing more barbell training, like I said, I was stiff, I was rigid. And if you said, let's start training, I'd always have to warm up. Whereas now, since starting to use the rope and just employing more like functional fitness training, I feel like that idea of supple leopard, just ready to go at any time.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think the rope is a great tool for that, in terms of having you ready all the time. And then it's great as well to replace a warm-up in your training.
You can add it into everything. It can be the warm-up, it can be the cool-down, it can be the workout itself. If you have the heavier rope that I've got, it's a full-on workout. And it's not someone it wouldn't benefit. You don't have to warm up to do it. Like how many things like kettlebells, we're playing with the 32 earlier, and it's like fair play, you just jump straight in. Kettlebells are one of the best things, actually. It seems like you can just jump in on it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
But heavy weights at the gym, like you got to warm your lower back up and everything. Sports, before you get intense, you got to warm up. But it's a rope, you don't have to do any warm up. You can pick it up for 1 minute if you want. Like dinner's cooking, I'm just going to step out in the sunshine on the grass, barefoot. You can take it anywhere with you. You can do it while chatting to friends. You can do some plant medicines and do it. And it's like...
And I don't think you finish training with the rope and you don't feel like you've smashed yourself at the gym. So I like to use it on alternate days. So say I'm training, and next day I'll do maybe a mobility and more of a rest day, and you can jump on the rope, and then you'll feel even fresher for doing that the next day to go back to training.
Absolutely, yeah. So to go into the figure of 8 pattern, to try and explain that a little more, if you picture an American sprinter, and their square back and their shoulders stay level and their arms swing forwards and backwards, they'll swing their arm up, they'll hit the end point, and then they'll swing their arm back, and they'll hit the end point and swing their arm up. Now, you've got in your movement pattern then, and this isn't to say they're not incredible athletes, by the way, which they obviously are. There's that, you're swinging a body part, hitting an end, and then swinging it back and hitting an end. Now, you picture, if you can just round the corners of that each end and turn it into a figure of 8, you're never having to stop moving, because you're just curving around the edge of the path and coming back on yourself. And then, so it turns these dead end movements into smooth, never ending movements because you've just turned an out and back into a figure of 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you teach yourself that using the rope.
Using the rope, it starts with the wrists, you notice it, but then the shoulders get it, the ribs get it, and the spine. And then when you start to run, you start to realize I can run and I'm not just like mindlessly plodding or swinging. There's never end to my motion, and it comes from the feet up, and it's these spiral patterns of internal and external torque through the muscles.
So you're constantly almost in a flow while you're exercising, and then because of that, you're more efficient.
Exactly, yeah. It's the way, and if you look at your forearm, the muscle that wraps around your forearm, it doesn't just go from your elbow to your wrist. It wraps around it. Like if you're trying to wring water out of a towel, you don't just pull the towel at both ends and pull it straight. You twist it round itself, right, to wring it out, to get the maximum tension into that thing. And it's the way our muscles wrap around our bones to work is they work better with a bit of rotational intent in them. And you know that when people bench press and they say try and bend the bar, right? Because you're putting rotational intent into it. And what that does is maximizes the muscles as they wrap around the bone to take the slack out. Whereas if you think about bench pressing linearly, there's slack in your muscles. You want to take it all out with this rotational intent. And that's in the rope as well. The rope, that's kind of a separate thing, but it's all in the rope.
Well, what the rope does, once you get proficient at it, it kind of entrains you to go from that internal to external torque. You become used to going in and out of that.
Exactly.
And then because of that, you become more efficient, more powerful, more explosive, all of these things.
All of it. It's all crossover. And it's just putting those neural pathways down of like creating patterns of movement in the body that I don't know whether we ever had it as children and grew out of it, or we never had it because we never saw other people moving that way. Do you know what I mean? Because we moved the way our parents moved, kind of thing. And because no one, this is the groundbreaking potential of this thing, is like people never really, other than like you see tribesmen, you see there's another company called GOTA, Greatest of All Time Athletes, and they're on very they each have differing views on some things, but very similar train of thought with a lot of things. And they've analyzed all the greatest athletes of all time, the ones that were the greatest of all time, and never had injuries in like over 10 years and stuff like that. And they all moved with these patterns of rotational intent with them, these spiral patterns on the fourth metatarsal of the foot, with the heels driving away. And I think as we get into Strong Fit more, he'll be talking about this. The heels drive away, not in. We get this. Most of us, our heels sort of come in this duck-footed way, and to most people that don't care or whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's like once you get into it, it's hard not to think. If you can improve your biomechanics, everything you do, not just sport but life, is going to just be more relaxed, and you're going to have better longevity. You know, the tires are going to wear out a lot slower because you're doing things in alignment with the way that we're designed. And so it's kind of like it's an exciting time, because I feel like because of the power of the internet, there's all these different people trying to come up with the answers. Like I say, functional patterns, you've got Weck Method, you've got GOTA, you've got Strong Fit, all circling like solutions to help humans physically in a massive way for those who are ready, that have done the work on themselves, that have earned it in a way, the right to have come across this stuff on the internet. Because some people, they find something on the internet, they want everyone to know about it, which I'm as guilty as anyone of. But at some point, I realized that I've found this part of the internet where I don't judge something because it's got less than 1,000 views. I don't deem it as not scientific or as, do you know what I mean? Which a lot of people will do.
And I think what you're showing is you're just taking these concepts, you're going and applying them, testing them out in your own life. And then you've got your sporting background where you've been able to compete at a high level at various things. You can go, right, is this practice making me better? Yeah. And you've got that measuring stick. Yeah. And then the stuff that's working for you, you're taking along with you, and the stuff that's not working, you're putting away. Yeah. And I think for you, the rope has been the main tool that you've come across, which has really helped you progress.
Outside of nutrition and emotional work, in terms of physical tools in my training that I've implemented, that's been amazing. And that's not even to touch on the sort of meditative benefits you get from it. I wouldn't call it a meditation. You can call it a moving meditation, which people use, and I would differentiate meditation and moving meditation are vastly different things. Because sitting and doing nothing is a big difference from doing something, right?
Yeah, but I would say it's a working in practice.
Working in practice.
It's an energy building practice. You finish with the rope and you feel like you've got more energy than when you started with the rope.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And so Weck talks about it balances your hemispheres because you're crossing your right hand over to your left and your left hand comes to you as you're doing the movements. And when you do this and you're doing right-handed work in the left part of your body, is a very rare position to be in, and you're learning to be dexterous on this side, and you're taking your left hand over to your right. It's also so that he says that balances your hemispheres. It's also a non-dominant side training tool because you can do a pattern on the right, or you can do drag and roll one way, and you try it the other way, and you're not as proficient at it. Well, now you can drill that move. So drag and roll is sort of the third pattern that teaches us rotational timing and sequencing. And so you can drill that on the other side, and you can become as good rotating one way as you are the other way because it's a tool for non-dominant side training.
So say someone gets a rope, where can they go to find the information to learn how to use that rope efficiently?
Yeah. There's two main sources on the internet at the moment, which is Weck Method and Rocka's Move. But I've just put together a course. I'm about to record, with the help of Lewis, the final audio voiceover for that course. So if you listen to this now, it is online, humantimothy.co.uk. If you can buy the course on its own, or you can buy a rope and you get the course for free, whatever you want to do. Or you can go on the internet and just search Weck Method rope, and there's tutorials out there for completely free. So whatever you want to do. But I've just created a course. I think it's the nicest one I've seen so far, which is, there's not much to compete with. But I've got solfeggio, harmonic. I've got Source Vibrations, who did the music for my last one. He's done the music for this, which is solfeggio harmonic, so that it's going to be doing subtle binaural work as well. And we shot nice locations with my friend Harvey, Victory Visuals. It's a well put together thing I'm quite proud of.
So you talk people through how to do the underhand, how to do the overhand, how to do the drag and roll.
And that's it for now. There's 4 patterns, but that are like the basic patterns, but the most important 3 for you to begin your journey is those 3. The 4th one is the sneak, and that's kind of an evolution of the drag and roll. So I've left them for now with the beginner's courses, the underhand, overhand, and the drag and roll, because that's plenty for the first 30 days of training. Drill those, put the time in on those, and then there's other tutorials online, but I'll work on an intermediate course after that. But I think to start, all you need is a rope and those 3 movements. And the drag and roll is a fun one, right? I've seen you improve at that lately.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of fun. And I think once you've got those 3 movements down, you can start teaching yourself, like you said, like you taught yourself. You can just start playing with it and making up your own movements, and you start feeling the pattern. And that's the cool thing about the rope. It kind of teaches you itself.
It does. It's beautiful. And that's why I called it Golden Teacher. Because the rope's kind of like a nice golden tan color, and it's your teacher, and it's kind of an ode to the magical plant as well, which is definitely inspired.
I think the cool thing about yours as well, because you've got a few different ropes here.
There's all the 3 brands that exist: Weck, mine, and Octo Moves.
What one's yours?
The gold one, yeah, and the red one's Octo Moves.
And there's a difference, right? There's a different weight and length.
Mine's the same. Mine's very similar to Octo Moves. I am going to release a heavier one, which no one's done yet. A heavy one, and I've got a heavy one sampled that I enjoy playing with, and I do notice the next day after I play with the heavy one, a little more. But for now, I've just released. It's a beginner/intermediate rope, and the heavy one will be like an intermediate/advanced rope. But for now, I've just released the Golden Teacher as the nice gold, and it's kind of like a hemp color. It's kind of I like natural things, right? It's a natural color. Cool. So I think that about covers all the main points for this. If you want more, you can always hit me up with questions. Go to the website, humantimothy.co.uk. YouTube, you're all smart people. You know how to find stuff. If you really care, you can find it. But for now, we asked anyone on Instagram to direct message our producer, Lewis, with some questions. So he's got some questions. And I said, there's no stupid questions when it comes to this stuff. People might not want to ask something. I said, there's no stupid questions. You just got to ask it because it might help people who have the same question. Yep.
Cool. So I've got one here from Isaac Shepherd 1410. And he asks, so I've been experimenting with the ropes, but I can't figure out how to incorporate the underhand swing into the flow. of the other variations? Any advice?
That was I thought of something to say and then I forgot it, and that's just brought it right back. So one of the things, there's a guy who I'd say follow on Instagram. He's my biggest inspiration for this stuff. Is Savage Protocols, and he's like the main coach that taught me the rope from Weck Method. And I get these nuggets of advice from him, and he was like, because this was in my first 3 days of doing the rope, and I was like, how do I improve? How do I improve? Similarly to that. And he was like, just keep turning around. So as you do the rope, you do underhand and the rope swinging. So if you imagine you're standing there swinging a rope and there's sand at your feet. And as you're swinging the rope, the sand is blowing away from you in front. So now you know which way you're swinging the rope. Now, if you can turn your head to face the other way, but keep swinging the rope in that same direction, the sand should be going away from you and behind you. You turn your head, turn your hips as well. And so you're turning a 180 degrees with your body, but the rope doesn't change its rotation. It just changes its rotation in relation to you. So the ropes, think of it as a propeller that never changes the path that it's on. So the advice for that is just to practice turning around. And as you practice turning around, so you swing the rope on one side of your body, turn your hips into it, face the other way. At the end of the beginner's guide, I explain this, and you can see it visually, which would help. But yeah, basically it's just to keep turning around. That's the best advice I'd give. It's just to go from underhand to overhand by turning your hips and your head, and just practice that turn. And quickly you get footwork and you get timing down that comes with that turn.
Cool. So the next one is from Rosanna Rosley, and it is, what is the ideal thickness for the rope and why?
It's a good question. It depends what you want out of it, of course. So mine's 12 millimeters. I'd say that's ideal for, as I said earlier, beginners and intermediate. I've played with lighter ropes and they feel really fun, and they can be, I call the lighter one Needle. If anyone watches Game of Thrones, it's a reference to Arya Stark's sword was called Needle, and it was a tiny little sword. And it feels quite fun. The thicker, if you want a proper workout, the thicker the rope, the more your core's going to get involved and the more muscles around your spine start to work. So yeah, if you want a proper core workout, thicker rope. If you want an everyday one, about 12 millimeters, and you could go for, I'd say 10 millimeters, but I wouldn't go thinner than that. It wouldn't give you enough feedback any less than that.
From the same person, have you got any small tips on corrective posture to receive the maximum benefit?
It's a big question. I'd guess I could save someone a lot of time and say work from the center of your body, rather, because posture, a lot of us go straight to feet and we get flat shoes, and that can cause issues in the ankles and stuff like that. And you have to realize correct ankle positioning is a response to the hips functioning right. So it's like we want to fix our ankles and our knees, but it's like it can come from the hips really. So strength, I think Paul Check's a good guy for this kind of stuff, because he goes through from crawling, our patterns of crawling and stuff.
Yeah, he talks about primal pattern movements. So if you type Paul Check primal pattern movements into YouTube, there's just a wealth of information there.
Yeah, I
It's
think
a good place to start.
He's a great place for that. Cool.
I've got this one from Kari Boosty. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but so if you were to go to an open field to work out with a rope and could bring two other pieces of equipment, what would they be and why? I guess not.
That's a great question. Yeah. I think we're looking at them, right? We would take the kettlebells for sure, or one kettlebell. What weight would you take one kettlebell? 16. I'd agree with that. I'm new to it, but yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. One other, I guess, a sandbag. Yeah.
Sandbag, yeah.
Sandbag, kettlebell, and a rope. You brought the sandbag, you brought the kettlebell, I brought the ropes.
Trio, heavy
Boom.
trio.
Yeah.
No fucking around.
Let's do meetups on the park, on the downs. Yeah. Cool.
So what would you do? What do you think is the best way to transition into new forms of the rope play? Just try something that seems weird until it doesn't and becomes fluent, or how do you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, try stuff that seems weird. Try to replicate things you see, Play with stuff with one hand, play with stuff with two hands. Drill all things, those 4 fundamental patterns, everything from that is an offshoot. And I think working transitions is how you get the footwork. So if you work dragon rolls, then you work double dragons, which is where you jump 180 every time. So practice stepping 180 with the patterns, then you get the footwork. If you can get sneak, my favorite pattern to do is sneak into reverse sneak and then turn 180 and then do sneak into reverse sneak on the other side. And someone called it the sneak matrix, enter the sneak matrix. And it just looks so sick. And that just comes from practicing transitions. So do something on one side and see if you can get into it on the other side in one step, in one foot placement. And this will teach you the footwork. And then from then, play with, it's all about variables. So put the hands high and swing high, put the hands low, swing low. Practice really like going loosey-goosey with the body and letting the rope really, so you can find some real weird fluidity. But in that, you can sometimes find true patterns. I've done that before where I'm just doing matadors and I just let everything really be relaxed and just let the rope really lead me. And I just get such a nice spine flow out of that. So yeah, it's just playing with different variables like that.
Where does that terminology come from? Sneak, matador? Is that Weck?
Yeah, it's his guys, I think, created. I think Weck probably came up with all of them. But I saw a video on his Instagram from like 2010 of him doing the rope. And I just don't know if there's any videos of anyone else up until 2017 that it got any further than him. But I feel like he thinks, and I think as well, like Egyptians or like, how hard is it to pick up a rope and discover what it does once you understand it from this perspective? Our ancestors must have done it and then it must have been forgotten, or people started jumping the rope and that became like a cool exercise trick and they lost the original. Because you see boxers doing it. That's something I should have mentioned, is like Sugar Ray Leonard. They hold it in one hand and they're bouncing and you can see them doing footwork, shuffles and stuff like that. And they're getting the timing cue from the leather rope, because the leather rope can go really fast. They're purely working on the fast footwork. And they're not doing all the same patterns, but they're getting the timing of up and down on the feet, using the sort of reload from the body. Yeah.
Cool. So this one's from Jake to the Bone. He says he would be interested in making his own. Are the handles just quadruple fisherman knots? And how long does it need to be cut? Like double his size and a bit?
Yeah, the knots should go up, when the knots are tied, it should go up to about your nipples. I'd say just below your nipples is a good height once the knots are tied. You can do a quadruple, I think it's a fisherman's knot. I've not actually know the name of it, but you just sort of wrap it around itself and tuck it down. But you can do, I think Wecks have 5 knots on them. Octo Moves has 4 or 5. I've got some with 3 that, and I actually quite like it with 3. So it might do that to keep it different. But 4 is a good handle. So yeah, I guess a fisherman's knot. On your point then, you said where the move names come from. Yeah, I think it's from them, but they are what they say on the tin, right? I guess you got with the matador, it's like you're swinging, the way the matador moves the red cape out of the way of the bull, and the sneak is your backhand is sneaking round so that the rope sneaks over the top of your head.
And is there anywhere someone can you type in matador rope into YouTube and there'll be a video of someone doing it?
So matador there will be, sneak there will be, but there's moves like cheetah tail, reverse sneak. Yeah. That I don't think so that's my plan, is to do an intermediate course, which is just like 10 or 12 moves. And then my favorite like combos. So flow, there's certain moves that feel really good into other moves because it sets up, the footwork sets you up to like smash something out the park kind of thing. So my plan is to do an intermediate one that's really comprehensive, really well shot, and just goes into all of these moves and then all the combos I like. And I reckon that could be done within 1 or 2 months. We'll see.
Wicked.
Cool. We're good? Great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys letting me have the floor on this episode. I hope all the listeners got a little more understanding out of it with the rope. Next week, I think we decided earlier, by popular demand, people liked the sound of Chris's history and they want to hear some more. So if you do us the honor.
Yes, we will be delving into the history of secret societies, my
Yes.
experience with Freemasonry,
Yes.
conspiracy, and bringing back the golden age into the modern day. It's gonna be interesting, guys. I'm looking forward to it. It's one of my boyhood fucking like obsessions. So I've got plenty of rabbit holes that we can go down, and there's a lot of stuff that I've spent numerous hours talking to Josh about, which only scratches the surface. So we've got plenty to do. To talk about again the Q&A. I like that little bit of an add-on to this.
Yeah. So where do we send the questions on Instagram to? Lewis Bradshaw 1.
Lewis Bradshaw 1. All right, sweet. So if there's any questions you want to know about Freemasonry, secret societies throughout the ages.
So you were the youngest ever UK, or
yeah. So what it was is
just to give them a quick.
Yeah, very briefly. By the time that I was 21, the rank that I held within Freemasonry, I was the youngest in the world to hold that rank, to hold that degree.
Wow. Okay. So any questions on that?
Just on that, so a friend of mine who asked me about this earlier said, is he going to be able to reveal everything that goes on in Freemasonry? And I said, I can guarantee he will tell you everything unless he gets suicided before this time next week.
Yeah, I'm very open to telling you everything that there is to know about it. I mean, to be honest with you, the sworn to secrecy thing was more so to do back in the day, whereas like if the Vatican found out that you were a Freemason, that you were like in possession of this sort of esoteric knowledge, you're fucked. You're burned at a stake, or you're beheaded, and your bloodline's wiped out. Just to make sure that this knowledge wasn't passed down and sort of survived through the dark ages. That's normally what the whole secrecy thing is about. In today's world, you can find everything that you need to know about Freemasonry on the internet. Honestly, you don't need to be. Actually, we can discuss this in more detail on the next episode.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it. We could roll that now.
Yeah, go straight into it. But just to hit everyone with the points, the course on the rope is out now. It's a big day for me launching this. humantimothy.co.uk if you are interested in more information. What about you, Josh? Where they see you?
So 3 places for me, ape_nutrition on Instagram, www.apenutrition.co.uk for the website where you can pick up ketogenic protein bars, organic MCT oil, CBD oil, and a few
coming
new
soon.
Things coming.
Some things coming soon. Yeah.
And then YouTube, Ape Nutrition. That's where this podcast will be.
You can see the video version where we're sat on a nice sofa on the black and white checkered floor.
Yes, very Masonic. This dude, very Masonic. Low key symbolism here. And for myself, guys, you can find me at www.primalalchemy.co.uk. You'll find our range of supplements, ancestral whole foods, clothing, biohacking tools. I guess you could call it enlightenment guide maps, all on there. You've also got me at Primal Alchemy UK on Instagram. That's where my main sort of presence is. And then I'm also on YouTube under Primal Alchemy as well, where you'll be able to catch up with our podcasts, which is not this one. It's actually my own personal podcast, the Red Pill Initiation Hour. So again, check that shit out. See what you think. Thanks for tuning in. And ready for next week to go deep.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.